morning. It's Friday at 9 o'clock, so it's time for Coffee with Karl. Today is a special edition, I guess we'd call it, webinar. Today is actually our annual meeting. Normally we'd have this annual meeting in person and gather everybody together, but for the second year in a row, we're going virtual with our annual meeting. This year's actually our 59th annual meeting, going back to the founding of TRIDEC's precursor, the Tri-City Nuclear Industrial Council, or TRICNIC, in 1963. We have got a star-studded cast, if we could say that, for the annual meeting today. We've got all of our leadership team, all of our past chair, incoming chair, committee chairs that are going to join us and talk a little bit about TRIDEC, who we are and what we do, some of our accomplishments over the last year, and some of the great things that we have coming up for next year. So I'm going to go just around my screen in no particular order. I'm going to start with Brandon Mayfield. Brandon is the president of Sherverdale Construction, and he heads up our membership committee. Good morning, Brandon.
Morning, Karl.
How's it going?
Good.
Good. You're about halfway through your day by now, right?
Yeah, we're getting close.
Okay. Thanks for joining us. Ron Boninger, recently retired CEO of Carbotex, joined us before on Coffee with Karl talking about Carbotex. But Ron heads up our federal programs group. Good morning, Ron.
Good morning. Is this the mug time if you want to do that, Karl, or does that come later?
We'll get right back to it. I'll introduce everybody, then we'll do mugs, and then we'll roll into it. Thanks for joining us, Ron. Eric Pearson is the CEO of Community First Bank and our just recent past chair. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Great to see you. Good to be here.
You bet. David Replog's our Vice President of Federal Programs. Good morning, David.
Good morning.
Sandra Haynes, our own Sandra Haynes, we'll say, is the Chancellor of WSU Tri-Cities and our new board chair. Good morning, Sandra.
Good morning. Happy to be here.
Any comments about Cougs at all, or do you want to start with that, or should we just end on that note?
Well, there's always room for go Cougs.
There you go. Thanks, Sandra. And last but not least, Chad Bartram is recently retired from Benton PUD as the general manager, and Chad heads up our Mid-Columbia Energy, oh boy, now is it initiative? I'm sorry, MCEI.
Energy Initiative, yeah.
Energy Initiative, there you go. Chad, good morning.
Good morning, Karl.
All right, well, moving right to it. Ron kind of kicked it off for us, but we are going to go through our mugs this morning. In honor of our 59th annual meeting, I've got the old Tri-Cities logo, Tri-Cities Development Corp. I think we had this mug maybe when we first came out with the website, like in the 90s, but just wanted to, our theme today is the legacy, continuing our legacy. And I think that's what's really cool for me being here in the Tri-Cities and having this chance to lead the team is just the legacy of everything, both that the community and TRIDEC has done over this 59 years is huge. We have such a great board, group of investors, and really a community that we've been able to work with and partner with to do some great things, and looking forward to some great things in 2021 for sure. So Brandon, let's go to you next. What do you got for us?
Well, I probably should have had a Cougar mug, it sounds like, but I went with the Community First Bank.
Oh, hey.
In spirit of the legacy of our outgoing chair, Mr. Pearson, who's led this thing through a leadership transition, COVID. So I think just talking to Eric, I'm sure he's eager to hand it off to you, Sandra. You're good to go.
Very fitting. Thank you. Ron, what do you got? I know Sandra's chomping at the bit to see this one. She was
and I got a little excited too, as you can tell, so,
yeah.
But, listen, those of you that know me, I really want to pull out my Ohio State mug because, multi-generations of my family has gone to Ohio State, but I decided to actually pull out just a family mug that I got for the holidays. My son was married this past year in May, and my son, older son, was married a couple of years ago in San Diego. And this is a mug that shows pictures of those weddings, and I think it says "Beyond Blessed" on it. So I'm gonna focus on my family instead of my Ohio State allegiance for today.
Okay.
And really honored to be a part of this group and the leadership that TRIDEC provides to our community.
Thanks, Ron. All right, Eric, what do you have for us?
Well, I'm kind of in honor of Sandra coming on as the new chair from WSU, and to do something maybe that's a little opposite the reputation of University of Washington alums. I'm going to congratulate the Cougars on an Apple Cup victory and say go Cougs.
All right. And do we call that bipartisan, or, I mean, that's just speaks of the balance of our state, right? Like, that's awesome, Eric.
Politicking, whatever you want to call it.
Okay. And let's go to the other Husky, David Replog. What do you got for us this morning?
Well, I guess I had sort of the same idea as you, Karl. Since it's our annual meeting, I have not the old school, but probably one of the more recent mugs that TRIDEC produced. I think this is the second time I've had the chance to share it on Coffee with Karl, but it's a really good, solid travel mug, but also in the spirit of this, I don't know, if bipartisan or by university. So Laura from the TRIDEC team for the holidays, for Christmas, gave me this sort of cool, it's a cell phone holder, but recognizing that I'm a Husky and a very proud Husky, but also very much love our WSU Cougars and especially our Tri-City campus. She made it with WSU on one side and UW on the other side. So that's sitting here on my desk. And so I thought I might share that as well.
That's awesome. And that's great. I think fitting tribute to that picture I have seen circulating where you're with Butch T. Cougar, maybe in Congressman Newhouse's office, which is, I think, perfect.
A little bit of blackmail. I got to blame Tim Peckinpah for that.
And Sandra, what do you have for a mug for us this morning?
So of course I have a WSU Tri-Cities mug, and in the spirit of legacy, it has all of the things that we do here in graphic form. And this was,
cool.
This is a creation of our own Mo Van Zandt here. So she's quite a good graphic artist, and we're lucky to have her. And I just want to say at this point too, thanks to Eric for taking the hard times, and I'm looking forward to an easier 2022. Well said.
Chad, how about your mug? What do you got for us this morning?
You bet. Well, every morning I drink from a United States Army cup. It's in memory of the time that I spent in the military back in the 70s and 80s, long time ago. And, you know, sometimes you'd go a few days without a hot meal or a hot drink, and coffee was really welcome back then.
That's great. Chad, thanks for your service. And that's a great shout out to the Army and your military service for sure. Well, I'm going to go into some updates for a couple minutes, and then I'll bring Eric back on and we'll run through each of our time together this morning. So I'm going to start off with just really a thank you to all of our members and investors for TRIDEC over the years. Just incredible group of business leaders and professionals that serve on our board and are investors in TRIDEC. Thank you for your investment, because the work we're going to talk about today, we couldn't do it without you. We talked about the start of TRIDEC in 1963 with the Tri-City Nuclear Industrial Council. It was started by a gentleman who is a real entrepreneur and leader in the Tri-City, Sam Volpentest. And then the two owners of the Tri-City Herald, which were Bob Phillip, who we lost last year in November, and Glenn Lee. If you're interested in the history of the Tri-Cities and TRIDEC, I got to give a plug out for C. Mark Smith's book, Community Godfather, which I read as I was going through the interview process. It really helped me understand some of the history and legacy of TRIDEC. Really very well written, and has so many quotes from so many local leaders. Great book, and great shout outs to TRIDEC over the years going through that. TRIDEC is really about three things for our community. We call it the three pillars for growth and prosperity: economic diversification, realizing the federal impact of investment in our community, both at Pacific Northwest National Lab and with the Hanford Cleanup Mission. Eventually, the cleanup mission will be finished. We need to make sure that our economy is diverse and strong, as some of those jobs over time go away. We also lead in state and federal advocacy. This is really where TRIDEC started in the '63. Long legacy of working with our federal delegation and our state delegation to bring critical projects to the Tri-Cities. And we continue that work with David and the federal programs department for TRIDEC. And then creative leadership. You know, our board's made up of leaders in the Tri-Cities, and we have effectively over the years, and we continue to do that, bring that leadership team together to focus on local issues. And we'll continue to do that into the future. So thank you, everybody. Wanted to start off with that. Tracy has a few slides where we'd like to recognize some of our outgoing board members and their service to TRIDEC. Start off with Fran Forget. Fran's an amazing and incredible leader. He has been a board member for 3 periods, from 95 to 97, 2001 to 3, and then 2007 to 2016. He's been our board chair 2 times, in 2004 to 6, and then 16 to 18. Just before Eric came on. Fran was our board chair, and he's been our past board chair since then, since 2019. So thanks, Fran. Really appreciate it. And in honor of Fran, we're actually working on emeritus board status, which it's great to recognize Fran and have a few people that have been key contributors over the year to keep them involved. Roberta Gabbard from Banner Bank just recently retired, and she was elected to the TRIDEC board in 2016, served on the executive committee since 2019, and just wanted to thank Roberta for her service. Gonna miss you, but I really appreciate your dedication to TRIDEC. Don Barnes just retired as a Port of Kennewick commissioner. He was appointed to the board in 2013, so a long time of service to TRIDEC. Thank you, Don, for your service to our board. And of course, Don Britton, who is the outgoing mayor of the city of Kennewick, who was appointed to our board in 2018. Don, thank you for your service. Really, really appreciate it. On to our next board recognition. Bob Thompson recently retired from the city of Richland, and he was the Hanford Communities governing board chair. We'll talk a little bit about it when David comes back on, but TRIDEC currently is honored to work with Hanford Communities and support them with staff time. Bob was really one of the pioneers and a long leader of Hanford Communities. Again, another organization that has a great history of work here in the Tri-Cities, really relating to the Hanford Cleanup Mission and some of the federal activities in the community, and the Energy Communities Alliance chair as well for Bob. So wanted to give special recognition to Bob, both to his service at City of Richland and then also to TRIDEC Hanford Communities and Energy Communities Alliance, which is the national organization that talks about it's a place where all of the communities that have a Department of Energy presence in their community are able to gather. And so long service to the community for Bob. Thank you very much. Our incoming board members, we wanted to give some recognition to. We're really excited to have the Donald Sampson from CTUIR, which is the Consolidated Tribes of the Umatilla Indian Reservation, to join our board. Don brings a lot of experience with both his tribe and the private sector to our board, so looking forward to working with Don. Bob Schutz, we've already had on Coffee with Karl from Energy Northwest. He is the new CEO and has a long military service in the Navy, in the nuclear Navy. Bob's a great guy, really contributes a lot. So thanks, Bob, and looking forward to more involvement on the board. We have Ted Cohen, who's with Baker Boyer. He is taking Vesna Dodge's spot from Baker Boyer. So welcome to the board, Ted. From our local jurisdictions, we have new board members. Gretel Crawford, newly elected, City of Kennewick, will be representing City of Kennewick on our board. So welcome, Gretel. Ken Hohenberg is the new commissioner from Port of Kennewick. Welcome, Ken. And then Nikki Torres, we just joined us at our board meeting last night from the City of Pasco. So welcome, Nikki. Excited to have our new board members coming on and looking for, again, some great involvement and work in the year that we're just kicking off now. Let's see, do we have one more slide, Tracy, or is that it for our slides? I knew it. This is really critically important to all of us. We have an amazing team at TRIDEC. This actually next week's my 2-year anniversary. We couldn't do it without the hard work of our team. David Reeblog that we already met, Tracy Zhao, who's working behind the scenes at Coffee with Karl. Tracy is the brains and the impetus for Coffee with Karl. She's done a wonderful job. Everywhere that I go in the community, everybody talks about this program, but it's really Tracy. She does amazing things for us. Laura War, is our director of finance. Laura has been with us so many years that I can't even remember right now off the top of my head, but TRIDEC is unique in our funding, and Laura is the one that keeps all of our finances straight and organized and does such a great job for, really committed to TRIDEC. And Tiffany is the kind of the glue that holds it all together for us. She does an amazing job as our operations manager, works in all of our areas and keeps us on the right track. So thank you to the TRIDEC staff. Really, really appreciate your commitment to our community and to TRIDEC. Okay, so just quickly, I wanted to run through some of the highlights of last year, the projects that we worked on. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but the first announcement that we had that had been going on for a long time is the Tri-Energy Partnership. So, there were advanced reactor demonstration project awards from Department of Energy. One of those was with company X Energy out of Maryland. Last year, we were excited to just be a part of it, and we had them on Coffee with Karl. But they formed the Tri-Energy Partnership, which is Energy Northwest X Energy, and then also Grant County PUD as the off-taker of the electricity. Really excited about that. That's going to be a first. Tri-Cities has been the home of nuclear energy for a long, long time. Actually, again, going back to 1963. And this is the new era. There's many opportunities for us, especially in supply chain as it applies to our new nuclear and the advanced reactors. The Dairygold project is huge. We've talked about that a little bit before, but Dairygold's planning to build what we believe will be the world's largest dairy processing plant. It's going to focus on high quality butter and protein powder that they'll make out of a lot of milk, about 200 direct employees, and then indirect jobs over 1,000 for the whole region. And so this is a great project that we're excited to continue to partner on and move forward. Research Fine Foods announced and has started construction on a new facility. They're also analyzing their existing facility to reconfigure it and add potentially up to about 150 jobs that we're excited to partner with them. And we really appreciate their selection to stay in Pasco and to add in Pasco. They've said, as we've talked to them, great things about our workforce, really great things for the Tri-Cities. So thank you, Research. We look forward to working on your project more. Local Bounty is a new company, and they're really the leaders in environmentally controlled agriculture. So indoor growing, they grow leafy greens and lettuce type products. Their model is really to grow it in a controlled, semi-robotic environment with indoor technology, harvest it the same day and get it on the shelf stores the same night. So really cool company, Local Bounty. And then the one that we didn't work on, but they selected Pasco and the Tri-Cities is Amazon. We're looking forward to working more with them. They have some large employment numbers, and we look to partner with them and the rest of the companies in our community and organizations and cities to understand how can we integrate their workforce into the Tri-Cities, and how can we make sure that that it's going to be a smooth transition for as they grow their workforce, and looking forward to connecting with them. Just quickly, I wanted to let everyone know that last year we contracted with a company out of Moscow, Idaho called Mcei, and they do labor and economic analysis, and then they have software which we have a subscription to. And so they did a report on the Tri-Cities economy. There's some really, really great data. I'm running a little bit long, so I don't want to get too deep into it, but we will have the link available on our website. So I'd encourage everybody that's joining us today to check out our website and look for the Mcei data report. It gives us some really amazing things about our population, how our population continues to grow. So everybody knows now we're somewhere around 306,000 people in our metropolitan statistical area, which is both Benton and Franklin counties together. Our workforce has recovered from COVID. We actually have a larger workforce now than when we went into COVID in 2019. And really what's great about, I think, our workforce, look at some of these numbers, is we have strong demographics in younger generations. So, pretty big share of our workforce is baby boomers that are getting ready to retire. Gen X, a little bit smaller, but then Gen Z and the millennials are really the biggest part of our demographics. It's a huge opportunity for us as we talk about some of these new opportunities, connecting young people with training and education to qualify them for jobs that are right here in the Tri-Cities. So good information. Check out our website to be able to look at that. And I'm going to jump in and invite Eric to turn back his camera on and talk a little bit about TRIDEC, being, serving for 3 years as our board chairman. Eric, and, thank you. Number one, you led the selection committee that I was fortunate and blessed enough to be picked. So I can never thank you enough for that. But, just some tough times during this 3 years. But you've been a long-serving member of the TRIDEC board. And do you have some thoughts about TRIDEC that you can start with, Eric? And then we'll get into a couple other questions for you.
Sure. Yeah, it has been a crazy 3 years, and we're thrilled that we chose you, Karl, to take on the mantle of leadership following the other Karl and continuing the legacy at TRIDEC. So, that's probably my greatest accomplishment. Obviously, you do all the hard work, you and the team there. The board is a resource for you and hopefully helps guide a little bit. But yeah, no, I mean, TRIDEC, I think, is an integral part of the Tri-Cities community. And we had a strategic planning session just prior to the hiring process, the executive search that brought Karl to us. And we talked about the focus areas for TRIDEC, and it's really never changed, I don't think, throughout the years. But perhaps we don't publicize that well enough, or historically we haven't. you're really the important role that's largely behind the scenes for TRIDEC. And you heard Karl talk about the business recruitment, and there's some big wins lately, that we have to show, going back, probably 10 years with AutoZone, and even before that, I suppose, with the Amazon Center, and now the big projects with Dairy Gold and Reesers and Amazon, new Amazon coming to town, and countless others that have been kicking the tires and looking to join us. And that work is really the quintessential economic development or business recruitment business. And it's super vital for us to be able to diversify our workforce. You think back to TRIDEC's original mission, really, that's what it was. It was a true and real fear that our dependence on federal spending at Hanford and the National Lab, should that ever be cut or jeopardized in some way, that there'd be an economic crisis in the Tri-Cities, which was to some degree felt in the 1980s for those who were here. It's before my time as a Tri-Citian, but I've certainly heard the stories. I think we're happy to say that we're vastly more diversified today than we were in the 80s, much less dependent on that funding, but yet it's still a very critical and the most important single economic factor facing the Tri-Cities economy. And so the continued advocacy for those programs, and obviously an effective cleanup from an environmental perspective, are crucial roles that TRIDEC plays, also largely behind the scenes and from the community perspective. And then, business retention, the work that we do to keep businesses here, help them expand. And we've had some ability to work with the incentive funds that we operate, although some of that may be in jeopardy long term. That's work for Karl and his team to figure out down the road how we can continue to play a role with incentive funds to keep businesses here local, help them expand, as well as incent businesses to come and relocate here. So, it's really at the heart of economic vitality. TRIDEC is and always has been largely unsung and behind the scenes. And the last piece is, we talked about this unifying voice that, the Tri-Cities is a amalgam of 2 counties and, 4 or 5 cities, and, federal programs, local businesses, agriculture, and there's a lot of different special interests that, to look out for, but we are one community. And I think TRIDEC it serves a very important role of helping to unify all of the different organizations, ports, cities, counties, other organizations, chambers, help to bring them together to tell the same story when that's appropriate to various governmental leaders at the state or federal level. So, just a vital role. Happy to be a part of it. It was a crazy 3 years. It was supposed to be 1, but Karl Adrian snookered me. He convinced me this would be a good thing, following Fran, who had to step back in when the previous board chair retired and moved away. And so he had to do 2 years. I came in, it was a 1-year deal. Karl says, I'm retiring. I think it'd be a good idea after you leave the search process that you stick around for continuity for a year. And then Karl too says, hey, there's a pandemic. I think it'd be a good idea if you stuck around for 1 more year. So, it wasn't that hard. Karl did a fantastic job, I think, adapting the organization to a virtual world. And he did that all himself. That was, with the board's blessing for sure. But Karl and the team made that happen. So couldn't be more proud of how TRIDEC has performed over the last 3 years.
Thanks, Eric. And especially thanks for that 3 years. I wanted to ask you too, and you've talked about it before when you've been on, but as a CEO of Community First Bank, how's our economy doing? I think that's the other part is, we kind of gave some of those quick numbers, but the economy is booming essentially. But from your perspective in the banking industry, any insights you want to share with us? Like generally, how are things going?
Yeah, I think there are things that everybody is in the business community is certainly already aware of. But yeah, the economy is booming. It's extremely strong. The one word I would use to describe it is demand. There is a ton of demand. And for a lot of reasons. Obviously, there's been a lot of economic stimulus, coming from all areas. So there's a lot of money. We see it. Our balance sheet has grown substantially. And that reflects that our depositors have increased their deposits, and every financial institution has experienced that across the country and in this community. But it's very dramatic, and it's kind of hard to underestimate or understate how big of an impact that has when there's that much more money available, cash money, liquid money to invest in projects and whatnot. And so that creates demand that drives the inflation that we hear about nationally. And I think those are the challenges that largely the community is facing, is work shortages, supply chain issues, and price increases driven by inflation, which is at the heart driven by demand. And so, the whole nation is experiencing that. I think we're acutely facing that. This is a particularly strong economy, very desirable net migration. I think the growth prospects for the Tri-Cities are extremely strong in the long term. But some of these things, that I would state, and I'll just say from the bank's perspective, I think people are always curious. Our customers are performing very well. By and large, we have no credit issues. We're not, knock on wood, we're not seeing borrowers having any difficulty paying their bills, and are doing in most cases better than ever. There's a few segments of the economy that were particularly hard hit by the pandemic, as you can imagine, in the hospitality area. Many times they were particularly well taken care of by stimulus. In some cases, the stimulus missed those that needed it most. But by and large, with a handful of unfortunate, exceptions, the economy has roared right through the challenges, and in some cases accelerated with the stimulus. But the longer term sort of systemic economic things that we're seeing is a worker shortage and housing shortage. And those things in the Tri-Cities are particularly key, and they go hand in hand. Obviously, when there's a housing shortage, it can affect workers' ability to relocate. And so, which then affects obviously your ability to recruit businesses if they can't find workers to fill the jobs that they're going to hire. And that's a longer term trend that I won't get into, but there's a lot of really good reasons for it. And I think it is a role for TRIDEC and the business community to play to help to alleviate that long-term backlog. And I'll just give you just a little bit of a tidbit on it, is that because of the 1980s, there was a national black eye surrounding the Tri-Cities from an institutional investment in multifamily properties up until probably the mid 2000s. So it was more difficult to get a multifamily project done in the Tri-Cities than just about anywhere until about 2005. And then the financial crisis hit, and it was difficult for anybody to get institutional financing for a project like that until about 2015. So you've got a 30-year run there where those projects were sort of hamstrung from the beginning, and we're seeing it start to explode hopefully around here, but you're behind the curve, and that tells a lot of the story. Similarly, lot development for traditional 1 to 4 family homes, not as negatively impacted maybe from the 1980 issue, or not as long, but the financial crisis certainly impacted the availability of money to flow into residential lot development for many years after the crisis. And so we were slow to put lots on that. That's why you see the severe housing shortage and multifamily housing shortage that we have. And it's going to take some time and deliberate effort on the part of our community to resolve that. And I see that as the biggest long-term issue, but with a super long-term positive take that I've always said that in my kid's lifetime, I think the Tri-Cities metropolitan area will be larger than Spokane. So that's an optimistic, bullish outlook.
I like it. You heard it here first. We'll we'll put that on our radar. That's very well said. And I appreciate that historical background, especially on multifamily, Eric. That's good perspective to have, to understand, like, what are some of those things in the past that have caused the situation that we're in now, to look for the innovative solutions like you talk about coming out of it. That's great. Eric, thanks for that. That was really good. And I appreciate your perspective, especially on TRIDEC and the economy. We'll bring you back on. We'll bring everybody together to have a couple minutes of question and answer before we sign off today. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
And yeah, thanks. We'll bring back on David Replog and Ron Boninger now to talk about our federal programs. And David, I'll kick it off to you to kind of give us an overview of what you do in the federal programs department as a vice president, and lead into the discussion with Ron and our federal programs group.
Yeah, so we've touched on it a few times already this morning, but part of the premise for TRIDEC or TRIDEC being created in the 60s was to advocate for the federal missions at the Hanford site. And the federal missions and TRIDEC have evolved a lot over the last 59 years. But today we still spend a lot of time and effort working to support funding for Hanford Cleanup, Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, and the great research and development they do there. And that entails a lot of working with our congressional delegation, working with folks from the Department of Energy, both locally as well as at headquarters. We work really closely as well with the Hanford and P&L contractors. And so that's sort of the foundational basis of what we do with federal programs. And we've been blessed to have extremely strong congressional support for as long as I can remember. I think our delegation as a whole gets it, and that's led really by Senator Murray and Senator Cantwell on the Senate side, and then Congressman Newhouse, who's our representative in the 4th Congressional District. And in addition to that work, which is sort of the core of what we do, we also engage in a variety of other federal issues, whether it might be working to reconvey the shoreline that's owned by the Army Corps of Engineers in the Tri-Cities back to the local government, working to re-emphasize the importance of the Snake River dams to our region to provide clean, reliable, affordable hydropower. And then also, as you mentioned earlier, Karl, with the award of the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program and the opportunity for a new advanced reactor here in our area, that's become a real high priority for us as well, not only to build the reactor, but, and Chad and I will talk about it later, but also some of the other opportunities that can come along with that. So it's, and I mentioned earlier that we've had really strong support from the congressional delegation, and funding has been pretty strong, both for the lab as well as for Hanford cleanup. And just as a quick update on that, FY20, we wrapped up FY21, we're into FY22. We're still actually in FY is fiscal year. And we are still working with the congressional offices. I know Congress is still working on finalizing the funding for the remainder of the current fiscal year, and then we'll be moving into our work on the fiscal year 23 budgets. But they are looking pretty strong for all of our highest priorities. And so with that, I'll hand it over to Ron to talk about some of the other things that we're working on. And Ron's come on as the federal programs chair within the last year or so, and has I think really been a driver in taking a look at what more can we do, what else can we do, and we have some other kind of exciting things that we're working on too within federal programs. And so I'll hand it over to Ron to talk about those.
Thanks, David. And as David pointed out, I've been the chair for just a little over a year, and the federal programs group has existed for over 40 years, doing great work. So my leadership is very new, and I'm honored to be part of this group that represents all the leaders of Energy Northwest, the lab, and everyone at the site. It really represents our community in a really strong basis. We meet monthly, and during those meetings in the past year, it won't surprise anyone, we've really in a lot of ways focused on the challenge that COVID has presented to all of our businesses and to our community. Yet at the same time, during this period, as David kind of mentioned, we started to talk about what are other areas that we may be able to focus on as a group and as leaders within the Tri-Cities that would be beneficial to the entire community. Eric mentioned unification. When I talk about this, I think that unification of what we're doing is really important. And this will not surprise anyone that as we kind of brainstorm what we could do as a group that would be an objective that would benefit our entire community, we started to focus on workforce development. The Tri-Cities, the potential is just huge. I love what Eric said about us being bigger than Spokane at some point, and I really believe that can happen, right? But in order for that to happen, we need a great workforce, all the way from skilled trade to highly experienced PhDs. That is really what we need to have growth. And as we also know, that employment shortage that we talk about is really nationwide, right? I mean, everyone is dealing with this, but yet we as a community have to figure out how can we make ourselves different? How can we attract people because of who we are as a community? So, job one is that, from Cadillac to Energy Northwest to the lab to all sorts of small and medium businesses, we need this workforce development. But how do we differentiate ourselves? And so what we started to talk about then was, we really have a tremendous experience with decarbonization, which is becoming such a critical part of, our entire world right now, as all of us look at climate change from different perspectives, but decarbonization is just a big part of it and can be both benefit to the world and be economically, very important to us. And so when you look at the Tri-Cities, you've already heard this, a few times, but, we're, the Tri-Energy Partnership, the small modular nuclear reactors coming in, the lab just, dedicated the energy sciences building. As one person on the federal programs group said, we have 12,000, all the people at site are environmental remediation experts, which is part of when you talk about sequestration or decarbonization, it's certainly part of it. So, as we kind of zeroed in on what we were thinking about doing, we said, okay, workforce development is really critical. But one thing to do is to work, the Tri-Cities can be a true worldwide leader in decarbonization. And when you think about some of the stats you shared, Karl, about the kind of people we want to attract, this younger generation to create our future, a lot of times they can be inspired by what they would see in the Tri-Cities, with our experience with solar, our experience with wind, our experience with hydro, and our deep experience with nuclear, which I think is a critical component of decarbonization in the future. Energy Northwest, a lot of people don't know this, is 100% decarbonized. There's very few utilities in the country that can say that, and we can be very proud of that. And so with this, I think where we have felt that we could really focus is based on this workforce development, based on our expertise in decarbonization, we can truly market the Tri-Cities in a way that can make it both a place that everyone wants to stay in and also attract people to become, a part of this. We really have an opportunity to tell a story. And we're only one part of that story. It goes back to this unification. Chad's going to talk on MCEI, the great work that they're doing. There's work being done in AWB, across our universities. And we want to do it together. But that's part of where, as we look at ourselves as a group, that's an area I think we're going to start to focus on within the Tri-Cities.
Well, that was really well said. Thanks for joining us this morning. As usual, I'm running a little bit behind, so we're going to bring on Chad, and then we'll all get back together for a couple questions at the end. But thank you for that. That was really well said. Thanks for your work and dedication to TRIDEC over the years, and continuing on with this even as you've retired and moved to Arizona. It's great to have you on. Really appreciate it, Ron.
Honored to be part of it. Truly honored. Thank you.
You bet. All right, Chad, thanks for joining us this morning, and thanks for heading up our Mid-Columbia Energy Initiative, MCEI. Could you give us kind of a general overview about what the MCEI and various communities or committees are working on and some of the projects that are out there?
Yeah, I sure can. And I'll open up with just a brief introduction of MCEI and then turn it over to David for some more specifics. MCEI was formed under TRIDEC back in 2009 to serve as a catalyst for attracting, retaining, and growing energy sector businesses in our area. Our members include a range of entities representing local businesses, labor, higher education, ports, utilities, as well as local governments and associations. We are structured as a parent committee, but we have 4 subcommittees that focus on major opportunity areas. And those areas include nuclear energy and technology, energy storage, transportation, and hydrogen. And it is these subcommittees where a lot of the specific initiatives that we take on are done. And so I'm going to turn it over to David to discuss these at a high level.
Yeah, and I guess I'd like to first start by just thanking Chad for his leadership with MCEI. We've been blessed with MCEI since its inception to have this incredibly strong chairs, I think beginning with Mike Schwink at the beginning, and then Mike Lawrence, and now Chad, and his experience and background with the utility industry is just invaluable. And this is a very interesting time in MCEI's evolution. I think there's this broader recognition of the importance of decarbonization and carbon-free energy. And we see that, and we'll probably touch on it a bit more, but with the infrastructure bill that Congress passed in October, November of last year, the Department of Energy is receiving $62 billion in funds to pursue that renewable energy, clean energy, decarbonization effort. And we feel like for any number of reasons, the Tri-Cities is very well positioned to help support those efforts. Our state has also made it a clear priority with the Clean Energy Transformation Act and the Cap and Invest and some of the other programs that have been initiated at the state level. So there's a lot of things that we're working on. The overall MCEI meetings that Chad chairs, they're a really good place to kind of get a high level overview of everything that we're doing. We always have really interesting guest speakers, and is a good conversation. But as Chad said, a lot of the sort of real work happens at the subcommittee level. With the nuclear, again, with the advanced reactor demonstration program and the opportunity for that advanced reactor, we're very focused on that, but also how do we leverage that and leverage the workforce, the available land, the community support for nuclear, commercial nuclear to do other things in that space as well, such as supply chain, manufacturing, assembly of advanced reactors and small modular reactors before they're shipped for siting elsewhere in the country or in the world. We have a great deal of expertise in nuclear fuels and opportunities to work on some of the new advanced nuclear fuels. I think are pretty exciting as well. And I think it's noteworthy to mention too that the Port of Benton recently received a $400,000 grant from the state of Washington to support their project that they call Vertical. And that's really to build the nuclear supply chain for advanced nuclear. And I think there's this perception that a lot of folks have that the state is not particularly friendly to commercial nuclear. And I think it's very telling, and it's a really good sign that the state of Washington provided that grant explicitly for advanced nuclear supply chain work. So we're really excited about that. Another area that and it's actually the most recent subcommittee that we created was the hydrogen subcommittee. And we have a few local companies that are doing some really great work in a variety of different hydrogen technologies. And I know they work very closely with both the lab and WSU Tri-Cities in developing some of those technologies and getting them to market, commercializing them. But the infrastructure bill again has a significant amount of funding for hydrogen demonstrations, and not only here in the Tri-Cities, but across the state and in the region. There's a lot of other folks who are working on hydrogen as well. So we're working closely with Charge, which is a WSU-led consortium to advance hydrogen use. And we're looking at where there might be some opportunities to secure some of that what they call hydrogen hub funding as that kind of matures. We're also in sort of overlapping with hydrogen as well as with some of the work that PNL has done over the years. We're looking at where there might be some opportunities in carbon capture. I think that as we look towards the future of what the demands will be in carbon reduction, some of that carbon capture technology, which does align very well with some of the hydrogen generation technologies, could be pretty exciting as well. And also kind of leveraging the national labs expertise. Another one of our subcommittees is energy storage. PNL is the national leader and really a global leader in grid scale energy storage, research and development, developing the technologies that you can use to store very large amounts of electricity for when you might need it. And so, in that subcommittee, we're working really hard at both better understanding what the challenges are, what the opportunities are, and with the mind towards potentially making the Tri-Cities home for a energy storage cluster of companies, and both on the R&D side that benefit from being so close to the national lab, but also on the manufacturing side as well. And then we're also looking at other opportunities such as pumped hydro and other sorts of maybe non-traditional energy storage as well. And then last but certainly not least is transportation. Again, we have a very clear signal from our state and at the federal level that we want to decarbonize. And thanks in large part because of our nuclear energy as well as our hydropower system, Washington State is already very low carbon when it comes to electricity generation. And so the largest other sector of potential carbon emissions is in transportation. And recognizing that, and that, again, we have a lot of capabilities in that area, where we established the transportation subcommittee to look at where there might be opportunities, whether it's with electric vehicles, with biofuels. And again, WSU and PNL have a great bioproduct science and engineering lab, where and with our agricultural sector here being so close by, there's all sorts of opportunities with biofuels as well. And then there is obviously an overlap too with hydrogen and using hydrogen as a transportation fuel as well. So we have a lot of folks who are really engaged with MCEI and its subcommittees. A lot of people are taking a lot of time and effort and putting a lot of energy into this effort, and it's really exciting. And I think there's going to be a lot of more really good news to come in the future. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Chad to wrap us up.
Yeah, thanks, David. So in addition to all those activities go on, we spend a lot of time educating ourselves on Northwest energy issues, state energy policy, electric system reliability, BPA transmission reinforcement for the Tri-City area. Our long-term goal is to establish the Tri-Cities as the clean energy hub of the Pacific Northwest. And we see a path that we think can get us there over time. In closing, I'd like to thank our subcommittee chairs. They are the spokes of the bicycle wheel. I really want to thank them for their extra effort. And back at David he's the hub of the wheel. So he keeps us all connected throughout the month. It's difficult at times. So thanks, Karl.
No, thanks, Chad. That was really well said. And I got to, echo your comments, especially on David. Something that's really impressed me in the couple of years I've been here is that, David spends a lot of time connecting with congressional staff members and our congressional delegation. And, they've given us direct messages back that say, we really rely on the work that David does, representing not just TRIDEC, but the whole community of the Tri-Cities for feedback on, different federal legislation or issues that might be coming through, not just appropriations and funding for our federal missions that are so critical to us here, but also things like through COVID, and working on different pieces of legislation that were critical to maintaining workforce and things like that. So I wanted to give a shout out to David, and then just another shout out to Washington Vertical that you talked about, David. Great work by Port of Benton. Looking forward to great things coming out of that group, directly connected to MCI nuclear for sure. But then it's also one of the Department of Commerce cluster grants that they got in that. So great things to come. Chad, thanks for your time today. Appreciate you joining us. We'll come back on in a few minutes, but now we're going to turn it over and ask Brandon to turn his camera on. Brandon, thanks for being so patient and talking about membership, but you're with your company, Sherverdale Construction, you serve on a number of boards. I know you're on the AGC board. I think at least for like Eastern Washington, I know you told me you go to Spokane for meetings and stuff, but as a board member for TRIDEC, you want to talk a little bit about what value do you see in being on the board and being an investor in TRIDEC? Give us a little background on that.
Yeah, I think in general, and it's been echoed in almost everybody's comments here, of how much work TRIDEC does behind the scenes, I think is the quote to emphasize there. And, dating back to that, I'm glad you said the 2-year date, because I had my dates off a little bit here, but about 6 months before Karl with a K came on board, the membership committee, actually led by my predecessor on the committee, which is Brad Fisher, we started to identify, what is TRIDEC's value, and I think we had a lot of energy starting to form, and we started reclassifying memberships and simplifying memberships, and then Karl came on board, and we had all sorts of energy to start really putting the message out, and then the giant pause button of COVID hit us. But we've used the downtime to kind of, I think, get our ducks in a row, if you will. But rather than focus, I think a lot of, other organizations are focusing on what, they're in the community, whether it's business to business networking, events, educational opportunities. Obviously we offer all of that as an organization, but the biggest piece, I think, from TRIDEC standpoint is the value to the community. And David talked a little bit about advocacy. I think, historically speaking, some of our membership or potential members have had the impression that our advocacy was somewhat limited to, the Hanford site, and I think definitely see it through COVID and through some of the recent, initiatives hitting our community. TRIDEC is advocating on behalf of both the federal programs as well as private business here in the Tri-Cities. I think the big impact, you look at the recruitment of companies like AutoZone, some of them have been mentioned. Cascade Natural Gas was a great recruitment to the Tri-Cities. But as a member value, this, with Mcei and some of the information it can provide us, I think Karl and I have had this conversation multiple times, but, we talk about the jobs that an Amazon brings to the town, and then, our Mcei data will show us how many other professions will add, whether, the medical profession, legal, everybody has their education, has their add-on to it. So really, those recruitments and that effort by TRIDEC are much more impactful than the jobs listed in the article in the paper, and I think we also need to look at some of the industries. I know one of the main reasons, Shervinell has been represented as construction is a direct impact of anything that comes to the Tri-Cities. But, in a lot of our conversations amongst our membership committee, we realize that there's a variety of industries that are directly affected, and so understanding that, just because, you may not do direct work directly for Amazon, understand that the 25 industries that grew because of it, your business probably does associate with some of them. So I think that's kind of our goal here is moving forward with membership is to show the value, tell the story. We've kind of been somewhat our own worst enemy as far as, doing all this work behind the scenes and not celebrating the victories, which I think is part of the deal we want to really emphasize moving forward. And then, the effort of, helping our existing members to grow and solidify the value that we're providing them, I think is a huge deal on the membership side for us as an organization.
That's good points. And those are, we talked about that Mcei data a little bit. You bring up some good points, and you and Eric both talked about it, that our work a lot of times is behind the scenes, not a lot of awareness around it. And I think with some of those data points that we can bring into the conversation, you talk about value to actually show it's not just, construction or this one, but through some of the supply chain analysis, we can show this many direct jobs leads to this many indirect jobs. And these are in industries that are throughout the Tri-Cities, even into some of these secondary industries like retail and, hospitality, food service, things like that. So great points. And just want to give everybody a heads up. We are looking forward to some great work that Brandon just talked about with membership committee. It's been a long time since I've been here, since we've been out and start spreading the word. So we're looking forward to getting back after that effort and just really building the base of TRIDEC and all of our partners as we do our work moving forward. But thanks, Brandon. That was well said. I'm going to go to Sandra next, and then we'll all be on for a few minutes. But thanks for your time this morning. And it's probably about time to clock out by now, right?
Not quite.
Okay.
Thanks, Karl.
Thanks, Brandon. Sandra, thanks for being so patient. As always, I'm kind of chatting too much with everybody, but I said it before. Thank you so much for agreeing to be our chair in 2022. I think that there's so many things with the efforts that you're leading at WSU Tri-Cities that are really alignment and partnered with all the things that we've talked about TRIDEC that we have going on and working for. So from our perspective, you're just like the right fit and the next great leader that we're looking forward to. And I know you and I talked about some of those things, but you want to talk about a few of your initiatives at WSU that you're leading here.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And this conversation has been very interesting, and it's amazing how we all are kind of coming into alignment and understanding the same thing about the Tri-Cities and the great potential that we have here. And I'm really pleased to be part of the education system here. And we have a tremendous education system here, starting K-12, and then we have Columbia Basin College, and we have WSU Tri-Cities. So we have pre-K all the way to PhD, and that's a pretty amazing thing to have in a community our size, and we're very fortunate to have it, and I'm very glad to be a part of it, as I said. I've always thought that Institute of Higher Education just can't be in a community, it has to be of a community. So everything that we've talked about today, from workforce development to focus on energy, to focus on STEM, to diversifying our educational opportunities to meet the needs and the growing needs and the changing needs of the community, are some of the things that we are absolutely doing here. We were actually, if you know our history, we were actually created to serve the community in 1946 as the General Electric School of Nuclear Engineering. So speaking of legacy, that's where we came from, right? It was a partnership between WSU and UW and Oregon State. And I think it almost sounds like an odd trio, but I guess we could say we're united in our rivalry against the Ducks. But other than that, we're moving on, and we've become WSU Tri-Cities just over 30 years ago. And some of their efforts that we're doing is we have continued to keep our focus on STEM education, and we just built Collaboration Hall, which is all of our undergraduate science labs. They are now state of the art for our students to learn in. We are also created the Institute for Northwest Energy Futures, and that we should be hiring for that within the next year. But that is also, it matches very well with what MCEI is doing. And as I listened to Chad, I was thinking, you know, MCEI was really ahead of their time, and I'm very glad that they're continuing their very important work. So anyway, we will be bringing in the Institute for Northwest Energy Futures in the very near future. And a shout out to David for remembering the Products Engineering Laboratory here on campus, because sometimes when we talk about energy, we talk about power. We focus on power because this region is so rich in power, but we also have that fuel side too. And we have the fuel side here on campus as well as the power side. So we'll be hiring a new director this, hopefully March. We're in negotiations right now, and you know how those go. So to be the director of the Bioproducts Sciences Engineering Laboratory and the co-director of the Institute for Bioproducts, and that's one of our major partnerships with PNNL. We also have two other institutes with PNNL that focus directly on energy, and that's the Nuclear Sciences and Technology and the Grid Institute. So we're very focused there on energy, as well as growing out our other programs. Just one more thing to just talk about the diversity of our programs. We are also very keenly aware of the need for healthcare in our area, and we just got permission to create a social work program to help with the mental health needs in the area. We're very excited about that. And we're also very excited about partnering with Columbia Basin College on all of these efforts. So
That's awesome. No, Sandra, that's so
3
well
minutes.
No, we're good. We have a couple minutes. I really appreciate that, the social work especially, you know, because we talk about talent and you know, one of the things that again behind the scenes, but I think this year we'll start being more intentional about it, is like just helping as a community add to the amenity base of our community. And that, you know, that's not just like nice places to eat and entertainment and stuff. It's also those important parts of healthcare, including mental health aspect. That social work is so critically important, you know, in so many different areas. So great to see that. Really appreciate your partnership with CBC, Rebecca Woods doing amazing things. And then I just saw recently that you guys had a now matriculation agreement with Blue Mountain College down in Pendleton, which is awesome because it talks about the regionality of what you guys are able to do at WSU Tri-Cities, and really talking about the region that we serve from so many different aspects, even in different states. So great job, and just thanks for your willingness to be our chair now, and looking forward to great things coming up in the year that we've just kicked off.
Great, looking forward to it.
All right, well, if everybody could turn back on their cameras, we've got about 2 minutes. As usual, I've kind of blown up our time, but let's just have some predictions. Like Eric kind of kicked it off with, you know, we're going to be bigger in Spokane in his kid's lifetime. I like that one. That's a really good one. We won't need to talk about Apple Cup or any football games, but Any other predictions for the future or trends that we haven't talked about? What's everybody think?
Well, I think we are very well positioned from all aspects to become that clean energy center that we talked about earlier. And I think the timing is right for us to move quickly on that.
Well, and I just think, I've lived in Spokane and throughout my life, it's kind of been like a commercial center and so familiar with Spokane. I think about Spokane is, they have had some growth recently, some organic growth, but in a lot of ways, Spokane just kind of reconfigured itself, right? It was always kind of that regional hub, the biggest area for really 3 states, the Inland Empire, that whole moniker and stuff. And I think what's different about the Tri-Cities is we're having this growth based on job creation, and our growth is going this way. They've kind of reconfigured themselves, as I said, and done different things, but just totally different economies. And they're doing pretty well now, but I think we have so many opportunities, like you said, Sandra, in the energy future, really, that connects so many different industries. We're well positioned, and we're clearly going to lead in that area, as we have for a long, long time that we talked about. We're right at 10 o'clock, but I just want to thank everybody today. We probably don't have enough time for closing remarks, but really, really appreciate both the time and investment that all of you and all of our board and members have made in TRIDEC over these 59 years. Long legacy. I think for us on the team, it's this opportunity to identify what's the value of TRIDEC. What are we all doing together? TRIDEC isn't just us. It's really the whole community. What can we do working together to solve problems, continue the growth that we've had, and make sure that we don't lose future opportunities by not having the talent that we need, the housing connection that you talked about, Eric. We've got some new challenges for the Tri-Cities, but I'll just say this always impresses me. The Tri-Cities as a community has a long history of coming together to solve big challenges, and I know that we're up for it, and I know that we'll do it together moving forward. So with that, I'm just going to sign off and thank everybody for your time. Really appreciate it. Great job. Great conversation this morning. Everybody have a great weekend. Thank you all.
Thanks, Karl.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
guys.
Okay. Thanks, guys.